Welcome back. I'm Nadine Blaney, joining you from AusBiz. Great to be here to introduce the next company that you'll be hearing from, Microba. It's actually a private company. It's a precision microbiome science company that's working to transform human health through world-leading technology in analyzing the microbiome. So Microba's proprietary analysis platform really allows researchers to reveal important connections and make new discoveries with accurate measurements of the gut microbiome. So Microba recently announced a partnership with a global consumer goods company. You know it, it's called Unilever, to really explore those links between insufficient sleep, which many of you would know affects about a third of adults in the United States, and the human gut. So the thinking is that everything between the brain and the gut is connected. Now, the company is aiming to improve sleep for everyone right around the globe. So the study that they're undertaking will really explore the associations between the gut microbiome and sleep, with current data indicating that gut bacteria is involved in sleep quality, the regulation of circadian rhythms, and the production of natural substances that really helps promote sleep and good sleep. So presenting will be Blake Willis. He is the CEO of the company. And just a reminder that if anyone in the audience would like to ask or submit a question for the Q&A, which happens at the end of the presentation, please type it in using the Q&A panel on your screen, and we will ask that question of Blake Willis on your behalf. In the meantime, though, Blake, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Nadine, and thank you everyone online for joining today. My name's Blake Wills. I'm the CEO of Microba. At Microba, you can think of us very simply as a gut health company, but really we're focused on the human gut microbiome, which we'll talk about what that is shortly. I wasn't expecting the plug on the Unilever partnership, but yes, that's something we announced this week, one of many partnerships that we're excited about, and exploring the connection between gut health and good sleep, a very important area that we're excited about as a company. A quick disclaimer. And before we get into the details of the company, I want to start with just some very quick highlights. First and foremost, we see ourselves in the digestive healthcare space. This is an enormous and growing market, and we have world-leading technology to analyze gut health, so more specifically the human gut microbiome. The team's managed by a strong commercialization team, as well as leading microbiome scientists globally. We'll talk to those very shortly. As a company, we've already established partnerships with global leaders, including Novartis, the pharma company, Unilever, the global consumer health company, and SYNLAB, which is essentially like Sonic. They're Europe's largest pathology company. And we'll talk to what we're doing in those respective partnerships later on. This year, which is our third year, we're on track for $3.7 million of revenue, which is very pleasing. That represents nice growth for us despite the COVID impact. And next year, we think we've set the base for a really strong growth year. Our revenue base is not only here in Australia, but it's global, with partnerships in the EU, the US, and obviously here in Australia as well. The technology platform that we're going to talk about today is important not only in measuring the human gut microbiome, but applying that in really high value applications, such as predicting response to cancer treatment and discovering new drugs for important indications such as inflammatory bowel disease. All of this put together, we believe that we've got a de-risked and capital-light business model, which has substantial growth upside. So to get into a little bit of the detail, firstly, what is the gut microbiome? It's the community of organisms that live in our large intestine that are critical for a broad range of functions. That includes helping us digest food, they create essential metabolites and vitamins, but most importantly, there's a very tight relationship between this community of gut bacteria and our immune system. And for that reason, we're actually seeing a strong link between the gut microbiome and a range of disease states, something that Microba is going to play a big role in. At Microba, we believe fundamentally that precise and comprehensive measurement of the human gut microbiome is required to unlock this rich source of opportunity. And that's what we bring to the table at Microba, is world-leading analysis technology that leads to better understanding of the human gut microbiome, better answers for consumers, clinicians, and researchers, but also the leveraging and unlocking of that big data to unlock new product opportunities, including drugs and consumer goods. So what does the differentiation actually mean for Microba? Well, first of all, it's important to understand that the whole microbiome is largely undiscovered. So 71%, in fact, of the human gut microbiome has not been cultivated or grown in the lab. That means that we don't know a lot about it. Here at Microba, we have technology that uses DNA sequencing techniques that lets us access the whole microbiome. This is really important if we want to understand the relationship between a healthy gut and certain disease states. But furthermore, we've even developed technology which lets us take some of these bacteria that have been never grown before and take them into the lab so that we can test them to see if they have a positive effect in certain disease states. The microbiome measurement that we do really comes down to two core components of our technology: our community profiler, which is where we analyze the DNA of the bacteria that live in our large intestine, and our genome database, which is the reference database that we marry against. And all of this delivers precision, meaning that we have world-leading specificity and sensitivity, but also greater coverage of the human gut microbiome. I'll explain why this is important shortly. In total, Microba has an end-to-end solution for the human gut microbiome. We have a lab operating out of the Princess Alexandra Hospital in Brisbane, which has world-class techniques that we've now deployed into the US and shortly into Europe. Our core intellectual property sits in our bioinformatic pipeline, which is where we take very large sets of DNA and reconstitute what someone's microbiome actually looks like from the DNA. All of this is deployed on high-end data infrastructure and a development solution where we can actually deliver white-labeled microbiome reports globally. So we think of ourselves as the microbiome engine that sits behind other tests that are offered globally through our partners. Just a very real example of why this is important and how our technology really differentiates ourselves. At Microba, in this human gut microbiome sample, we're seeing 183 distinct species, of which there are many more strains sitting below that. If we're using the leading competitive tool, they're only picking up 81 species in this microbiome sample. So in other words, they're missing over half of the picture, which if you want to understand what's going on with your gut health, if you want to understand in a big data context, the relationship between disease and health, if you're missing half the picture, that's going to be very challenging to do. So why are we so good at this? At the end of the day, the company was founded by two leaders in the space, Professor Gene Tyson and Professor Phil Hugenholtz. They have 20 and 30 years respectively in the field. They've worked at leading institutions globally, including in the US at Berkeley, MIT, the Joint Genome Institute. They've published some of the seminal papers in the field, including in 2004, the very first paper using the technology that is being deployed at Microba today, albeit many iterations beyond the original version. And together, these two gentlemen have created the foundation for this leading technology platform that we have today. Their story is they came back from the US in 2010, developed the technology at the University of Queensland over a 7-year period. And then in 2017, we actually spun the technology out of the University of Queensland and launched Microba. Also involved in the team is Professor Ian Fraser. Many of you will know Ian. He's the inventor of Gardasil, which is the cervical cancer vaccine. Today, that's a $3 billion in sales per year Merck drug. Ian is our deputy chairman. He helped us spin the company out of the University of Queensland, and he plays a key role, including chairing our medical advisory board. We have a global team as well, so we have many colleagues in the US that are global commercialization experts, as well as through Asia and beginning in Europe. This leads to a global operating capacity. We have, as I mentioned, distribution partnerships already in place in the US and Europe. We're excited about the growth potential of those partnerships, but we're also negotiating in a number of other regions, including the Middle East as we speak. So at Microba, we really have a two-pronged commercial model. Firstly, we have a microbiome analysis business. This business is where we provide a microbiome analysis engine to partners so that they can offer a microbiome test to their audience. Their audience may be consumers, clinicians, or researchers that are seeking to understand the microbiome in the context of their patient or their research project, or if you're a consumer, they want to understand, is my gut healthy? What can I do to improve it? Is there any diet changes I can be making to actually optimize my gut health? So this microbiome analysis engine is world leading, and the distribution model that we've set up is highly scalable and global. It also has a side benefit of generating big data. This big data is of immense value to Microba. We're able to actually encourage people on a de-identified and opt-in basis to share their data with us so that we can make new discoveries around certain disease states. We call this our health discovery platform. And this health discovery platform is actually letting us look at indications such as inflammatory bowel disease, something that is very prevalent and rising, particularly in Western societies, where we can distinguish what a healthy microbiome looks like in contrast to the inflammatory bowel disease context. And from that, we can look at how we can actually shift the microbiome to have a positive influence on that disease state. So this generates new drug discovery and personalized medicine opportunities. So hopefully you can see how we go from a microbiome analysis engine, which is generating revenue, that creates big data, and then finally we have a downstream benefit of looking at that data for drug discovery and personalized medicine opportunities. So our first pillar of growth is the microbiome analysis engine. As I've mentioned, we have partners in Europe, which is Europe's largest pathology company, SynLab, and in the US, which we're actually already in a relationship with a East Coast headquartered company with product in market now for some 6 to 12 months. And we're in negotiations around further partnerships in the US. Here in Australia, we're partnered with the US headquartered company Metagenics, which is offering a kit to their clinicians. This lets their clinicians actually establish a baseline for a person's gut health, design an intervention, and then track whether or not that intervention's had the desired effect on the gut microbiome. So we've got some really notable partnerships in this space. The growth is very pleasing, and we believe we've set ourselves a strong foundation for growth into FY22. The second area of our business that I'd like to talk about is the global consumer health opportunity. Touched on by Nadine at the start, we've just announced a partnership with Unilever. Unilever are using our technology and our data set in combination with Microba to understand the relationship between the gut microbiome and sleep. So at Microba, now that we've accumulated this fantastic data set, we can start to leverage it to actually, first of all, generate revenues, but secondly, unlock really important product development opportunities. So the way that might manifest itself and other partnerships might manifest itself is that we go into a joint product development opportunity where we might develop a probiotic or a prebiotic, which will shift the gut microbiome in a positive direction to enable better sleep or possibly other indications that we're also interested in. We also have a second major partner in this space, which at the moment remains confidential, but we're hoping to make an announcement around that in the next 8 to 12 weeks. This market is enormous. So the probiotic market alone is worth $35 billion as per some estimates. And the disruption opportunity to make that a personalized health market is really, really large. So at Microba, we have the technology that will actually let someone take a test, determine what probiotic is actually going to be useful for them, and then track the effectiveness of that probiotic through time. At the moment, it's very much a shotgun approach to probiotics. You might go to Chemist Warehouse or any other chemist and try and decide which probiotic is the right one for you. That's fundamentally flawed because we don't know what you're missing. And when I say what you're missing, we don't know what species of bacteria you don't have in your gut. We don't know your deficiencies. We don't know what functions you're unable to perform. So choosing a probiotic off the shelf is problematic because we don't have enough information about you as an individual. If we can put a test at the start of that and actually give you the right probiotic that will make a positive impact, that $35 billion market opportunity is very much real for Microba. The third area I'd like to talk about is the application of our technology in a really high value area that's something that's close to a lot of people, which is around cancer treatment response. So Microba is working in this field, and specifically immune checkpoint inhibitors, where we have some pilot data which shows us that based on someone's microbiome, will determine whether or not they're going to respond to cancer treatment. This is in both melanoma and lung cancer that we're interested in. So at Microba, we've just about to launch the world's largest dedicated melanoma microbiome data set. And we'll use that data set to prove that we can actually predict whether or not someone will respond to an immune checkpoint inhibitor. The reason why this works is because the microbiome has a very tight relationship with our immune system. And in many ways, we believe the microbiome has the opportunity to prime the immune system to be ready to respond to an immune checkpoint inhibitor when delivered to a cancer patient. So this study that we're about to launch will be primarily driven out of the US, but we'll have multiple sites here in Australia. And if we can ultimately predict response to cancer treatment, the next step is actually improving the number of people who respond by shifting their microbiome in a positive direction. We believe following this study, we'll have the right data in hand to actually make those suggestions. The fourth and final area I'd like to talk about is our drug discovery platform. So Microba has a novel drug discovery platform, which takes a human first and data-driven approach to drug discovery. This is something that's highly sought after by pharmaceutical companies. When I say human first, it means that we're starting in a large human data set. We know what a healthy microbiome looks like in human data, and we know what the disease microbiome looks like. And we're able to pull out signals from that data set to identify leads that we think will ultimately be useful in treating the disease state. Our flagship program here is inflammatory bowel disease and the subtype of ulcerative colitis. And we believe and have data now supporting, particularly in the recent animal data that we've generated, that this human-first, data-driven approach to drug discovery is working. So this is a very exciting area with some great deal precedent. Just last year, we saw Gilead entering into a $1.5 billion partnership with a microbiome company called Second Genome. We have ongoing dialogue with a number of pharmaceutical companies, and the interest in our microbiome drug discovery platform is very high. Just to further emphasize the point around some of the comparables and give you a sense of the market opportunity, we have two listed competitors in the US. One is called Series and one is called Avello. Their market caps are respectively $2 billion and $750 million. Our technology, we believe, is far more differentiated in our ability to accurately measure the microbiome and identify the correct leads that will make a difference in the disease. So although they're further progressed than us in terms of pushing their assets forward, we believe that our very precise and accurate approach is going to deliver really strong results. We've seen a couple of really big transactions in the space. So Microbiotica announced a $534 million transaction with Genentech Roche, the large pharmaceutical company. And I've already mentioned the Gilead transaction that Second Genome entered into. Elsewhere in the space, I thought it worth talking to 23andMe and Persona, Grail. These are companies that play in the human genomic space. In many ways, the microbiome is just like the human genomic space. It's just 5 years earlier, and we're currently on the forefront. Some of these companies have now emerged into global giants. Just in the last 4 weeks, we saw 23andMe, a human DNA testing company, announce a $3.5 billion NASDAQ listing. We saw Grail recently acquired by Illumina for $8 billion. This is a cancer diagnostics company. We've seen some of the Australian companies do relatively well, although small in comparison to some of the global giants such as Bard1 and Telix, who are making rapid progress in the cancer diagnostics and therapeutics space. So at Microba, we think there's an enormous opportunity here for growth and that we can learn a lot from what's unfolded in the human genomic space. So finally, I'd just like to touch on where the company's going and what our next milestones are. So I've touched on the fact that we're on track to meet our FY21 revenue target of $3.7 million. That represents really pleasing growth. We're not a COVID story, so to continue growing despite COVID, we're very pleased about. We have numerous partnerships that have commenced in FY21 and also under negotiation, which we think we'll be announcing in the next 3 to 6 months. And that's going to deliver a really strong platform for growth. In the consumer health space, we've entered 2 major partnerships, one of which we've disclosed, one of which remains confidential. And we believe the opportunity to disrupt the personalised nutrition market is very real, and Microba has the technology, relationships and commercialised expertise to do that. The third area is this predictive cancer diagnostic program, where our pilot data has shown that with 90% accuracy, we can predict whether or not you'll respond to cancer treatment or not. We believe the large trial where we're accumulating big data in melanoma is going to position Microba in an exceptionally strong position to have the asset leading this field, using the microbiome to predict treatment response, but ultimately giving people a microbiome intervention that will improve their chance of response to cancer treatment. That in itself is an enormous opportunity. And then finally, the drug discovery advancement. Microba has a human-first, data-driven platform to discover drug candidates. Our flagship program is inflammatory bowel disease, and now we've gone from human data, we've teased out using AI and machine learning methods the actual best leads that we think are relevant to treating disease. We've isolated those leads, we have them in the lab, we've got extensive testing in the lab, and so far the results are really positive. We're aiming to go back into the clinic next year to get back into humans, and we think this will actually represent a major inflection point for the company. Finally, concluding and just reiterating, the deal precedent and the opportunity in this space is actually quite enormous. So we think Microba's growth profile, both on the revenue and the biotech side of our business, is very exciting. And so far, we've got a great track record in delivering against our commercial milestones. With that, I'll actually conclude my presentation, and it's an exciting time for Microba. We may be coming to market later this year. We're still working through that with the board. So please do reach out. We're excited about where we're going, and we think we've got a great growth profile. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Blake. That was fantastic. And you answered one of my questions, of course, which was when potentially you think you may look to list here in Australia, presumably. We have had a couple of questions come in from the audience, if you can just stay on and listen to those. We've got a question saying, where do you see the most value potentially being created? So is it kit sales, cancer, consumer partnerships, or in the development of your own drugs?
Yeah, definitely the most value, if you just to put a dollar figure on it, is the biotech side of the business, where we've got a cancer treatment response program and a drug discovery program. They can become billion-dollar opportunities overnight if we get that right. That being said, we remain excited about the kit sale business. We think the microbiome industry is nascent. We think we're in a leading position. And if we can grow sales to $20 or $30 million over the next 3 to 5 years, then that's a really exciting opportunity. And they really do go hand in hand. So I'm not willing to say one's better than the other. We think that we've actually got a great opportunity on both sides of the business.
Okay, Blake, another question has come in saying, can you give us an idea of how many kits you have sold and the current kit distribution strategy, given the change of directions that came through last year?
Yeah, sure. So we've sold well over 10,000 kits. I won't give an exact number, but it's well over 10,000 kits. And what we've pivoted to, and the question might be alluding to this, is we no longer are the retailer of the kit. We don't sell the kit necessarily ourselves. The exception to that is here in Australia, where we do still offer a microbiome test. And you can jump on insight.microba.com and have a look at that test and learn all about your gut health. But what we're much more interested in is being the wholesaler of the technology. We think of ourselves as the Intel chip inside a test, something that's powering another test. So those test sales are really starting to pick up both in the US and Europe. Europe's still under very much a COVID cloud, so it has been a little bit slower than we would have liked, but we think the next financial year we'll start to see some really meaningful growth there.
Here's another question that's come in. This is about, let's just phrase it, Finch Therapeutics recently filed for a SPAC with a valuation of around $750 million US. If you have any understanding of this company, so Finch Therapeutics, could you please explain how Microba differs?
Yeah, certainly. So the Finch Therapeutics company comes from what's a not-for-profit organisation called OpenBiome. And their approach to date has been using fecal microbiome transplant to actually intervene and treat disease. So we consider that a sort of a very early way of treating the microbiome, even though it's probably still the most popular. At Microba, we believe we've got precision techniques to identify the right microbes that are very specifically going to affect disease. And we now have publications just recently published just showing how much superior our approach to measuring the microbiome is. So we very much take a sniper and a precision approach to getting the right microbes that a lot of other groups, including Finch, won't be accessing. So Finch, you know, they're a good company and correctly identified they've just filed for a NASDAQ listing, and it just talks to the opportunity that's in the space.
Another question coming in. What do you need to do to be in a position to deal and do a deal with Big Pharma? Would being listed on the ASX be a benefit to this?
Look, we've got some great relationships with Big Pharma, and I'm not sure if being listed on the ASX does make a difference one way or the other. I mean, there's certainly been plenty of ASX listed companies that have done great transactions with Big Pharma, so maybe there is something in that. Our relationships remain very close. They're watching our programs. We're updating them regularly. They're excited by what we're doing. When exactly someone's going to bite, that is the big question. But we think that the most recent animal data that we've generated, and now we've got clear line of sight to being in humans again, and we think they're key inflection points that actually might result in a deal getting done.
Well, I think that's all the questions that are coming in from the audience. Just a question for me, Blake. I mean, is it safe to assume that pretty much everybody has something that could be addressable in their gut that could lead to a better quality of life? Because if that's the case, you know, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, it certainly is. And that's one of our challenges is we have so much opportunity, and it's about picking the right areas that we want to play. Our database is comprehensive, and everything from obesity to depression to other CNS conditions, inflammatory bowel disease. There's a broad range of opportunity. And for Microba, it's about placing our bets strategically in the areas that we think are going to have the most impact. That being said, the future is that, you know, we're going to be able to tweak the microbiome in certain ways that's going to optimize everyone's health. And we see a future state where when you go and get your annual checkup with the general practitioner, they'll do your blood pressure, they'll do your other blood markers, but you also get a microbiome test. We do believe it's that important in dictating outcomes of life. And just to give you an example of that, using our data set, we can now predict your age. I think it's plus minus 3 years. So longevity even is dictated by the gut microbiome. It's such a critical system in our body, and doctors are now describing it as a new organ within the human body. So it is critical, and there's so many facets in which it integrates with our overall human health.
All right, Blake Willis, CEO of Microbiome, thank you so much